listening to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. And I got to tell you something, people. So this past weekend, I'm on Facebook, and I see my high school friend, Scott Shaw, and he posts a picture that him and his wife are at the Mann Music Center in Philadelphia watching the Star Wars show. So I respond to him, I go, well, hey, the Conductor is going to be on my show this week. And I got to tell you, my guest is a great actor, but I've done over 1,040 episodes of this show, and this is the first Conductor I've ever had. And so I'm really excited about that. And my guest is Damon Gupton. How you doing, Damon?
I'm doing all right, Steve. Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's funny, I was looking into you. I found also you used to play the trombone when you were younger, I believe. And in 6th grade, I played the trombone, and I was supposed to do Flight of the Bumblebee, a duet with a girl named Liz Schiffman. And I got mono, and I missed it, and then I gave up the trombone. So you play trombone, right?
I do. I used to. I don't play as much as I should, probably, or could. But, yeah, I think the last time I pulled it out was for a show. They let me use it on Criminal Minds when I had my stint on there, and that was the last time I played. So that was already about 7 years ago. So not doing too good on that front.
Now, you got to tell me, how does someone become a conductor? I know you have your degree in music from Michigan. I know you went to Juilliard for acting. But how does, because you don't, it's not like first of all, there's not a lot of conductors. I'm sure, but how do you become, is that something as a kid you love music and you aspire to be a conductor? Or what was your path to becoming a conductor?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, as a kid, I used to be enamored of movies and movie scores. And my mother came home with the album to John Williams' Superman once. And of course, John Williams at that time was conductor of the Boston Pops, and you would see them on TV every Saturday night. And I used to see this man waving his arms, and I kind of wondered, what is that? What is that about? And of course, she was buying me all these movie scores, Star Wars, Raiders, E.T., and all that stuff. And I said, oh, I want to do that, or try that, or see what that's about. And so I started learning trombone and playing in bands and orchestras, and one thing led to the next, and I said, well, maybe I could be, John Williams, because I thought he was pretty cool, which he is. Yeah.
Have you met him?
Yeah, yes, a couple of times in passing, and I might get to see him again if his health holds up this summer at Tanglewood in Boston, because I'm conducting Return of the Jedi with his former orchestra, the Boston Pops, which is a huge honor for me. So hopefully, I know he might be in the vicinity because they're premiering a piano concerto of his. So my fingers are crossed that he'll be there again, so I could actually spend some real time with him.
Now, put it in layman terms, because I'm bad at music. What is the job of the conductor? We see you waving. You have to bring up or is it like directing a movie, but you're directing an orchestra? Tell me, because I'm fascinated, because my parents always took me to music, and my brother played the drums, and my sister played the cello. So as a little kid, Cherry Hill East, the school I went to, had a great music program. So I would go, and I would see it, and they took us to Philly, and I always, as a thing, it's fascinating when you see this person, and they're always, it's cool. But so when you're up there, I just want to know what goes through your mind and what your responsibilities are.
Right. Well, the conductor is responsible for a lot of different things, and it, of course, depends on the level of the ensemble. But generally, you need someone up there who can kind of guide things, set tempos, set how loud things can be, how soft things can be, pace of pieces. So you mentioned being a director, and that's actually kind of a good comparison. You kind of, helming the ship, so to speak. Now, there are a lot of things that obviously these people can do without you, like musicians have been playing these pieces for years and years and years. But your job is to try to come in and provide a different outlook, a different interpretation, a different take. But a lot of it is practical stuff. How fast does it go? When does this end? How long does this big note, the beginning of Star Wars, how big do you want? Beep, diggity, diggity, that sort of stuff. It's a harder profession than a lot of people know. It's not just people standing up there waving a stick, although if you talk to some musicians, they will say it's just somebody up there standing waving a stick. But you know, it's intricate and it's tricky, and certainly keeps me on my toes when I'm lucky enough to do it.
Now, when you go Boston and you go, I know you're in Cincinnati. You go to different cities. When you conduct them, is it sort of similar to when you are a guest show on a TV series? Because you're walking in, there's already that ensemble, you know, whether it's a cast. So how do you break that? There's probably a barrier, like, you know it. I mean, every actor I know talks when you go, the guy, you know, that some they welcome you, some they're like, you know. So what is it like? How do you break as when you go in? How do you break down? Because I know you'll be like with 5 different ones this summer. You have the Black Panther show. You have a few other shows. So how do you break that down? How do you create a relationship? Because they really have to trust you because you're the man up front.
That's a really, really great question and really great comparison in terms of being a guest star on a series. That's sometimes the trickiest part because you are a guest in someone else's house. It's like if you're a music director of an orchestra, you can kind of come in, we're doing this is the way it's going to go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you're a guest, you have to kind of take the temperature of the room. Some places are like, you know, right on board with you on a ride with you, like Philly. Philadelphia's great. I love them to death. Cincinnati, some of the orchestras you mentioned, I've always had really good relationships with. But then every once in a while, you walk into someone's house and they're kind of like, who are you? You know, all of them want you to prove why you're there in a way, you know, and they determine whether, you know, within 5 minutes, whether or not they're going to, you know, keep inviting you to the table or not, or how they're going to treat you, or there are always a couple of people that have to test you or do whatever. But for the most part, I've had really, really good experiences working with really, really top-notch ensemble. So I've been fortunate, but it is tricky. You are nervous. I'm very nervous in rehearsals because you're just like dating. You don't know how it's going to go. Your first date, like Boston Pops, I've conducted once, and this is my second time. And a lot of the players who played there didn't play the last concert I played, so it's kind of like a reintroduction or a first introduction. So I'm anxious. You know, this is Boston Pops. You know, this is, you know, John Williams' group. They know how to play these charts.
Right.
Know, what are you gonna say? You know, to engage or to earn your place at the table. So it is very much like being on set, though. I never even really thought about it, but it is like being a guest when you walk onto.
Well, I've heard like everyone says, you know, when you would walk on NCIS, it was great, you know, or like Law and Order, and you've done a lot. It's great because, well, the crew knows their show's going nowhere. You know, they have a job and they have their pension and they're set. So they're like, but on other shows, you walk in and if it's like, well, I don't know if we're going to get picked up. So everyone's sort of on pins and needles and eggshells. So, yeah. So you went to Michigan and you were a music major at Michigan. Now, what was your goal when you graduated Michigan? Because as a music major, you know, did you want to was it to be a conductor or did you want to pursue the music field?
You know, to tell you the truth, I thought I would end up teaching high school orchestra coming out of Michigan. My degree was in music education, and I thought, you know, I'd have a house with a picket dog and, you know, married, maybe kids at the time. You know, I thought I'd be probably living in Michigan, you know, just having a simple, quiet life as a teacher. You know.
So what happened?
Yeah, well, the irony is I could not get into grad school for conducting. I was going through a particularly challenging time in my younger life, and I had no plan. Like, I'd only applied to one school, graduate school for conducting, and I had been doing some plays in college and was looking to try to express myself in a different sort of way. And I had a teacher at the time who's no longer with us, but she was encouraging. She was teaching a Eugene O'Neill theater course. And she said, you know what? She used to call me baby. She said, you know what, baby? You need to take my theater course, my Eugene O'Neill theater. I'm like, Eugene O'Neill? What do I have to say in, you know, Moon for the Misbegotten and Long Day's Journey in the Night? And she said, no, it doesn't matter. You need to take my class. And I did. And she inspired me. She said, you should audition for Juilliard. And I said, Juilliard, like the Juilliard, and not for music. I was like, how do I audition for something that's not music at Juilliard? She said, no, just do it. And I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? I take a change of trajectory and pace. My life needed it. I think my spirit needed it, and I ended up getting in. I think I auditioned in like 5 schools and got into Juilliard. Couldn't get into Yale, NYU, and some of those other war horses, but I got into Juilliard.
Now, what was the Juilliard audition process? Because I've talked to people who went to Juilliard older than you, and people who are younger than you, and the process has drastically changed. And now, of course, with everything, and we'll talk about in-person auditions and all that. But what was your process like to get into Juilliard? Because I've heard it's so competitive. They don't take many of you, and it has that name, Juilliard. So what was your audition process to get in there?
Well, my audition process was, pick the 2 monologues, and then we had to go to Chicago. I had to take a train from Ann Arbor to Chicago because they had regional auditions because I couldn't afford to get to New York. And we all went to the Palmer House Hotel, and, there were, I don't know how many, about 100 or so, and, you go through the rooms and you're walking around, and there's all these mind games that some of the auditionees tend to play. I remember this kid, he came up to me and he said, I'll never forget this. He comes up to me and says, oh, is this your first time auditioning? And I say, yeah. Because, I'm like, hey, good morning. I'm happy to be there. And he's like, yeah, well, you probably won't get in. It's your first time. So he said, they're now taking tall black kids this year, so you won't probably get in. And I'm like, what's wrong? So who's the first person I run into at my call back? Actually, when they announced that I had gotten in, they announced the list. He was the first person I ran into. I smiled. I said, who knew? I guess they were taking tall black kids this year. But it was weird because it was good for me because I wasn't used to that world, so I didn't have any real expectations. I just wanted to go in and do my thing and show up and do the best that I could. Whereas a lot of people in the room, it meant everything to them. To me, it was like, oh, I'm just experimenting. I don't know what I'm a musician. I'm a conductor. Blah blah blah. So I think that freedom, helped me relax and do well. And so, but it was, a lot of people, a lot of sweaty kids, a lot of dreams, and I just was kind of riding it. Like, this is nice. I want to try this, and I think that helped me a lot.
So what was it like when you got there, and who were some of your classmates? Because, I think Reed Damon, Reed's a little older than you. Reed went there. I'm friends with Reed. He's told me about the process, and he had like a stellar, like all the classes you guys have, it's like stellar. But so who were some of your classmates, and how did you acclimate to, as you said, you were just like, okay, if I get in, I get in. So it's something that it must have been weird. All of a sudden you're sitting there with all these people who it's been their life dream, and you're just this guy who's like, well, I'm a conductor, so what was it like, and who were some of your classmates?
Some of my classmates, Liz Reeser, who I just saw in their play out here in LA at Pasadena Playhouse, Michael Chernus, who's on Severance, Pat Chidera, Lynn Collins, who ended up doing Merchant of Venice with Pacino, the film version, many years ago. Let's see, who else? Shonda Hartman. That's been pretty much my group. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was your other question you asked me?
What was it like when you were working with these people who acting had been their whole life, and as you said, you're more of a music guy?
And I was a little more aloof back then, and kind of in my I want to be James Earl Jones while I'm here phase. So I was a little more detached and distant. Some of the class was a lot younger because they were coming straight out of high school. I already had a degree, so I was an older student. So I kind of kept a bit of a distance from some of that stuff because I wasn't as, I just wasn't as young as some of those guys. I was always like the 26-year-old or 24-year-old going on 82. I was a little old man, and so, I just had that different vibe. But I took it very seriously because I wanted to be like Andre Braugher Oh, speaking of that, man, that stuff you did with Kyle on Homicide is great because I've been listening to some of your guests and I just love that stuff. But that's the era of time that I was there, so I wanted to be Andre and these serious guys, and Wendell Pierce was floating around, and Eric LaSalle and Fishburne, and so I was pretty, focused and straight-laced. I think some of my classmates, while they were interested in the course, there were some serious cats. They wanted to have fun, and we had Juilliard, and we're young, and it's cool, and we're in New York, and I wasn't particularly interested in that element. I was too serious, I think,
Now, when you get out, and it's funny is when you talk to people from Juilliard, well, Juilliard doesn't prepare you to find an agent. Okay, they don't prepare you any of that crap. They sit there. It's like, I mean, they might change, but I may be wrong. But a lot of times they said you got the best training, but when you get out, I know there's showcases, but when you get out, what do you do? Are you prepared to live in New York, or what is your plan when you graduate? What were you going to do?
Right. My plan was to get out. I had developed a certain amount of confidence and had worked on myself spiritually and mentally and whatever. And I had planned to come out and haul ass. And I kind of came out and did just that. I came out and started working instantly. So, I already had a job at Shakespeare in the Park. And then I left that job to go shoot my first TV movie. And then I got my first Dick Wolf show, like an actual series regular on the Dick Wolf show within a year of being out of school, so I was already off doing exactly what I wanted to do, which was just work and have experiences and be successful. And what I didn't plan on was the hard lessons you have to learn very quickly, like when that Dick Wolf show gets canceled and like literally in the middle of your scene.
Wait, okay, tell me that story, because that was Deadline, right? You're talking about Deadline?
Deadline. So I get Deadline, I guess like maybe, I don't know, half a year after I get out of school or something like that. And it's a dream job. You got Oliver Platt, Bebe Neuwirth, and Lily Taylor, who I had adored as an actor, and Tom Conti and Hope Day. And you're on the Dick Wolf show, and it's your first regular, and you couldn't have talked me down from the cloud I was on. And, you're making money, you're shooting in New York, and there's a trailer, and, it's great. The driver taking you to work every morning, all that stuff. And then, we get in, and I start to learn the realities of, our show may not get picked up. I'm like, picked up? What's that? We get like 22 episodes. This is the Law and Order guy. We're going to go for 7 years. This is my dream. I want to be, Eric LaSalle. And, Richard Brooks was my hero from the old Law and Order. I'm well on my way. And literally week to week, day to day, you don't know. You don't know if it's coming back. And then you're looking at Oliver Platt's face, and some days you talk to him and he's like, yeah, I think we're coming back. And literally the morning we got canceled, Oliver's sitting there, and we have a big scene. I had finally had a big episode, and we have a scene, and Oliver's like, hey, kid, I think we're doing good. We're doing good. I think we're going to get picked up. We're going to get picked up. And literally, I swear to God, about 10 minutes later, the showrunner, John Roman, comes in red, and he says, no, sorry, everyone, but we've been canceled. And like mid-scene, mid-everything, it was over. Just like that. Now, gradually, a few days later, they let us come back and finish out a couple of episodes. But at the time, I didn't know that. But it was just like, that's it? And it was like, yep, that's it. And I looked at Oliver, and he just kind of laughed. And it was like, but wait a minute, that was the dream. And then I didn't work on television for a year and a half.
Well, I was going to say, how do you even go back to the set? And I know you're professionals, and I know you're getting a good paycheck, but it's like, I would be like, I really don't give a shit now. Like, you guys cancel me. We're not done. So it was like, it must have been such, especially for you, it was one of your first experiences. It must have been, you solved wonderful side, but then you saw the ugly, ugly underbelly. So what was it like when you went after that? Like, you're going to work. It's not like, it's like anything, when you have an audition and you don't get it, your jaw goes, oh, you get that thing. So what was it like when you were going to work those last few episodes? It must have sucked, especially for someone who, it was beginning of your career.
Yeah, it hurt. No doubt. It hurt. Going back in, I mean, you're excited because, I get some kind of closure. I get to see people at least, because the first time you didn't even get to say bye to people. And I think that's always been the hardest thing when I'm on things that get canceled. You don't get to make, you say your goodbyes to people that you really have enjoyed. But it was hard going back. And yeah, there are actors that were like, I don't want to be here. This is over. It's done. And of course, a lot of those actors had other projects. The crew had another show because the crew from that show were going to a little show called Law and Order Criminal Intent, or, which ran for like 10 years, whatever it was. So everybody was kind of set after a while. They knew they were going to work. The younger stars, myself, Christina Chang, who was on it, who was obviously just on the Good Doctor, ended their run last year, we were like, oh shit, what are we going to do? So it was very difficult because they knew success. They all had other things. They could taste, that this was our virgin experience. So it was hard, very difficult. And like I just said, I didn't work on television for a good year or so, year and a half after. So
how do you deal with that mentally, just for the fact that, and I always tell people, actors have like the hardest gig because, I mean, if I know a lot of salespeople, and I'm like, you guys, rejection, talk to an actor. You guys, you didn't get a deal, boo, hoo, hoo. These people have a job that could change their whole life, okay? Like, Jim O'Hare said when he eventually became a series regular in Parks and Recreation, changed his life. Because you're like, I'm a series regular. I got this with 23 episodes. Well, even if it runs for 4 years, I'm set because syndication. So for you, what... you're good because you did get booked. So that year and a half where you didn't get work, where's your head at? Because you knew you were in a series. If you suck, you're not going to be in a series. I mean, maybe once in a while someone might suck and know someone to get on a series. But where were you at? Because you were still new in the business. Did you find yourself getting bitter at all, or did you just stick to the grindstone?
Oh, that's a great question. It was probably I think I was still too young and naive to be bitter about it. I think that came later after getting fired from shows. But I think there was still nose to the grindstone about it. Like, you've come this far. This happened. It was great. There'll be others. There'll be something else. Will it be a Dick Wolf show that shoots in New York? That kind of thing would come into my mind. But there were plays, and I think I did a couple of plays and, auditioned for some movies, did some little spots in movies and whatnot. But yeah, I think there was more hope in, I was, my head was pretty square on my shoulders, even though I was licking my wounds a little bit.
So you're still in the game now. Then I look at your IMDb. 2011, you end up on Prime Suspect. Okay, now was that your first series regular since Deadline?
No, there was some failed pilots, a Stephen Colbert pilot that I loved that didn't go, and I think there was something else in there, but that was a big one because that's right after I had moved to Los Angeles. I had decided to move to LA, and I had done some conducting stuff, but at that time I had, one of the things that did happen after the lull in New York is I started getting back into music. And so that led me to more conducting stuff, etc. And so I said at one point I had taken a job as assistant conductor at the Houston Symphony and spent 2 years in Kansas City as assistant conductor. And so I had been kind of going back and forth. And I said, let me move to LA. If this pilot I'm on with Laurie Metcalf and Aya Cash and Jerry Burns, wonderful, wonderful cast, Max Mushnick pilot. And whether it gets picked up or not, I'm going to move to LA. And I decided to do that. And the show did not get picked up, but I was happy as a clam getting to LA because it was a change of pace. And sure enough, within a couple of months later, Prime Suspect came up, Peter Berg and Alec Alex Cunningham, who I knew as a writing person from Juilliard. She created that show, and Prime Suspect was still, I think, could be easily one of my, it's definitely top two favorite jobs I've ever had, that show.
What makes it one of your favorite jobs?
Oh, that cast, man. That cast, jeez. Kirk Acevedo, who I love, who I just saw for the first time a couple of months ago. Tim Griffin, Aidan Quinn, Brian O'Byrne, Maria Bello. I mean, this is the man who created Friday Night Lights, which I loved as a television show. No marks on the floor. Cameras, 2 or 3 cameras moving at all times. Short days. Shot on the NBC Universal lot. Oh man, it was heaven. And once again, tough lesson learned, because we were in and about 8 or 9 episodes, 10 episodes, and they decided to cancel us. And then you learn again. You're like, how can you cancel this show? That show was really good, and we just didn't have time to do our thing. But I think at that time, what we were doing comparatively to some other shows out there was pretty good. It was pretty damn good, but it just didn't find its niche, and we were done before we had begun.
Now, and as I said, then there's the Divide, there's the Player. There's shows that you're on, so you're good. But it's like, do you ever sit there and go, why is all this shit happening to me? Like, I'm on, like, I paid my dues. Maybe they don't want a conductor. Maybe they just want an actor. They don't want, but so what is it like for you? Because it's obvious you're getting work, but do you sit there and for a while go, man, I can't take this. I can't take this, because you get all excited. I'm sure you always get excited. I mean, when you're in a pilot with Laurie Metcalf, like, who's not picking up a show with Laurie Metcalf? She's amazing. And the other people you mentioned in that show. And then with Colbert, Colbert was different. It wasn't, he wasn't Colbert yet. I mean, it's funny. I saw him on an old Law and Order, Criminal Intent, in a serious part, which is so bizarre when you see like the replay. That's Colbert. But so, what goes through your mind? I mean, I don't want to be redundant, but it's like 4 shows that you think, one of them you got to say it's going to get a second season. It's got to get it. I mean, how do you stay confident? Because I'd be like, even though you made your money, but it's like you want to have like, everyone wants that nice little home, like, I can go back for 3 years and then I don't have to work. I can go conduct in off season. So what do you do? I mean, how do you keep your shit together? Because it must be tough.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie, Coop. It is. It's very tough. I mean, I've been very fortunate in my career. I've been a series regular 10 times. 10 times. I know people who've never been a series regular who are way more talented than me, who work harder, who do. But for some reason, fortune has smiled on me that way. But nothing has ever been a sensation. There's no homicides. There's no Law and Orders. There's no hit to the things I've been attached to. Which I'm grateful for every opportunity I've had. But sometimes it's like, okay, well, fortune might not smile on you that way. Be happy that you're working, and be happy that you're growing and being around people that challenge you and raise the bar. But sometimes you look around, you're like, oh man, it would have been nice to get that NYPD Blue or that ER, and now with the current state of things, you don't even know if that's ever possible again. Like, it might not be. 22 episodes. What? The Pit is a revelation right now. We just finished watching The Pit. And I'm like, that's awesome to see, like, something that kind of goes back to that old model. But, that's rare. And there's no 7 seasons of Law and Order, 10 seasons. I think that stuff has gone away. So, yeah, it could be frustrating if you haven't so-called hit, something that you think you are ready for. But at the same time, I have to look back at all my beautiful experiences. Like, for the Divide, I was number 1 on a call sheet, and that was a beautiful, beautiful show. And I had that experience. I have to be grateful for that. It didn't do what I wanted it to do, or what any of us wanted it to do, but it was a good show. And so you just have to kind of remember what your season is. If it's for you, it'll be for you. If not, it won't be, and there's nothing you can do to change that. You just kind of have to enjoy where you've been placed. And I've been placed in some really unique and beautiful positions. So.
What is the responsibilities when you're number one on the call sheet? I'm saying once again NCAS. I heard Mark Harmon was a great number one, but it makes sense because the guy played quarterback for USC or UCLA, so he had that in him. He had that leadership in him, because you have to be a leader when you're number one, or you can just be a prick and the show will fall apart. But what is your responsibilities when you're number one? And it must be so cool just to see Damon Gupton and oh wow, you know.
In all honesty, let me clarify a little bit about that experience. When we shot the pilot and we did the original production of that show, I was number one on the call sheet, and then we ended up going to series and they flipped, and Marin Island became number one and I was number two, simply because she became the weight of the show when it went to We Television. So let me clarify that. But when I was number one, for those couple of months or whatever it was, I wasn't prepared for the responsibility of, because I didn't know what that meant. I thought that just was the number, and you show up and you do the things you always do. And it was like, no, you need to take the temperature of the cast, of the concerns of the cast. You need to be able to help address those. You have to have a dialogue with the showrunners and producers. You set the tone. Your connection to the crew should be, I think, successful number one. It has a different energy to it, a different connection, a different weight to it. You have more input on scripts and energy and drive, and I wasn't ready for any of that. I didn't know much about what that entailed, and I had co-stars who had worked a lot, who had worked since they were 17 and been prominent names. And, sometimes they come up to me and they kind of nudge me and try to suggest things, because I had no idea that I was supposed to be, taking the temperature of this department or doing this or standing up for some of their needs, us as an ensemble. And so it was a nice little learning curve. If I was to ever have that kind of fortune again, I'd be better prepared. And some of the people I've worked with who've been number ones have been very informative and how that should probably look like. And then there's some people I've known, I'm kind of like, I wish they, I don't know, buck up a little and do some head another direction. But I've always had pretty good number ones. But I have a little notebook of things I'd like to do if I was to ever have that happen again, which, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. It would be just nice to have good projects to work on with good people. I think that's the most important thing.
Well, you've had some great projects. Now, how did Criminal Minds come about? And what happened? Because that's like, well, it's funny, because that's one of those shows. I have a friend, I don't know if you know Lex Medlin. Lex has done the show a few times. He got CSI Vegas, so all of a sudden he thinks his life's going to change. And then the strike happens, and he goes, wow, from 22 episodes to 12, and then all of a sudden it gets canceled. And you're like, holy crap, like, that's what you look for, the pay dirt. It's like, I gotta say. So Criminal Minds, did you audition for that, or what? How did you end up on that?
Criminal Minds actually came, a manager called and said, would you be interested in taking a meeting with Criminal Minds? There's some interest. And I was like, at the time I'm coming off shows like Goliath, with like Billy Bob Thornton and William Hurt. And again, you kind of feeling your thing, and that's a really good show. And you're coming off things like Criminal Minds, you're like, procedural, it's been on a while, I don't know, but then they brought up some things and said it's close to home, it shoots in LA, shot 7 minutes from my house. It was a very popular show at the time, and I think I wanted to do something different and something a little more stable, maybe a little more visible. And I took a meeting with the wonderful showrunner Erica Messer, and lo and behold, they casted me while I was doing a play. I was doing Ma Rainey's Black Bottom here at the Mark Taper, directed by Felicia Rashad, and I was having a ball doing that. And I think Erica came to see the show, and lo and behold, I was on Criminal Minds with Joe Montana, who I adore, and those wonderful, wonderful folks, wonderful crew. Again, short days, ran like a machine, you know. And I was like, okay, I could find my way here for a little while, you know, and hopefully contribute something. You know, there was a little heat because of how, um, I mean, they were billing it like I was replacing the Hotch character, which I was not. I was just something different. And of course, he had been released, and there would have been a great backlash against that, against me, like personally, some old time fans started coming for me, you know, being like, you know, that kind of thing. Said some very awful things. I had to stop looking at that stuff, and I know my now wife had to stop looking at that stuff too, because it was really getting under her skin. I mean, the racial stuff, it was just ugly. They came at every angle. But when I got on, couldn't have been more welcoming and more supportive from the cast and crew. And then we got in, and I got 15, 16 episodes, because the season had started before they had made the adjustment. And I get in. My now wife and I had taken a good trip. We went to Bora Bora, you know, after the season had wrapped, because I'd always wanted to go to Bora Bora. And we come back, and the DVD is released of the season. The season DVD comes out, and I looked at the cover, and I wasn't on the cover. And then something just kind of sat in me, and I said, you know what? I told her, I said, you know what, babe? I don't think they're going to pick up my option. And she said, you're insane. They just gave you a wife. You know, you just got there. You know, what? And I said, something is sitting in me that says they're not going to pick up my option. And I had talked to some of the folks before and said, am I okay? Because, you know, I understand the gravitas of the show. I understand, you know, Shamar Moore, you know, I understand the weight of what it was and the honor of being there. And I wanted to know if I was doing, you know, as good a job as needed to be there. And I didn't always know, you know. I think, you know, it's hard sometimes to tell if you're okay. And, you know, so I just tried to show up and do my thing. You're playing the trombone, you're doing whatever, but you're trying to earn your keep, you know, and whatever. And I wasn't sure. And then when I didn't see when I didn't see that on the box for the season, the DVD box for the season, I said, I don't know if I'm going to be here. The very next day, my agent calls up and says, I don't have good news for you. You need to call me back. And I knew instantly. I just looked at my wife, and I started laughing. I just said, here it comes. I just knew. And I got on the phone, and they said they're not picking up your option, which stunned me, because a few weeks before, it looked like there was, and I know there were contract negotiations with some of the other cast members and all this other stuff, but it did not feel like I wasn't at least going to be on another season of it. And yeah, lo and behold, that happened. And it was one of those, yeah, it still stings a little bit. I won't lie. You don't get over those things. I mean, you do. And I remember Paget Brewster actually told me something once. She says, you know, things like that happen. It takes a while to get over that stuff. You know, those things hurt. And they felt terrible. Oh, the cast and crew. I mean, nobody really enjoyed that decision. I could tell that. But I guess for me, the hardest part was not feeling like I was like, did you need something else from me? Did you want something? How can I show something? I didn't have a chance to be whatever. And to this day, I don't know what the truth of the call was, or who made the call and all that. And because that's how that goes. And another irony, Joe Montana told me we were shooting something like at the end of the season, like the last episode. And we were out somewhere at a house doing something. And he said, man, if you haven't been fired in this business, you haven't been around long enough. And it had just come up in conversation, and, you know, we chuckle. And lo and behold, you know, and everybody says, oh, it's not firing and all that other stuff. Sure it is. I mean, you're getting dumped, man. You're getting at. You know, somebody, that's what people, what's how you look at it. And I'm like, no, you got fired. You just got dropped. And And then, of course, the replacement comes in, and then you try to compare yourself to what that is and be like, oh, was I not good enough? Was I not, quote unquote, sexy enough? Was I, and then all that stuff plays in your head, and it can eat on you if you let it. So it was, again, like not getting into grad school for conducting or losing the deadline job. It was grounding and humbling. Like I needed that to happen, because you to remind me that no, this is a race, and sometimes the decisions aren't personal; they are simply business, and that's the way that stuff goes.
Yeah.
But it stings to this day, because people still like recognize you from that show sometimes. And same thing with Black Lightning, which I also got booted off of the third season. It's like, honestly, people recognize you from these things, and they're things that they sit on your soul because you got it didn't go down the way you wanted it to. Your exit.
Now you mentioned Billy Bob, and I would think he's such a talent. I mean, he must have been great to work with, and I bet you also connected because he's a musician also. So I think you guys have that same thing. What was it like working with him? Because I was an extra on when I was in LA on Goliath, and I was walking off set. I played a lawyer. And my friend Tony Stark was on a few episodes. Anthony Stark, like he came and sat with me with the background, and we ate lunch. And someone's like, "You can't talk to the actors." I'm like, "The guy's been on my show. I know him. Shut up, leave me alone." But I remember he was like, we got the background got out early, and Billy Bob was walking. He's like, "Oh, at least you guys get to go home early," and he just seemed so like chill, like just so happy to be there, and just like, man, I have a great life. So what was your relationship with them when you worked with them? Did you guys bond at all because of music, or what?
Well, no, actually, the person I bonded with because of music was Dwight Yoakam, oddly enough, believe it or not. And I actually had him show me some stuff because I was learning the guitar for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and he actually showed me some things on the guitar I have on video, which I'll keep forever. But we talked a little more because we had more direct scenes together too, me and his character. But Billy Bob, the interactions I had were great. I've obviously been a big fan of him and his work, so that was an honor. But I also bonded, I think, more with with Bill Hurt, man. That was like, because we went to Juilliard and we had some of the same teachers and all of that stuff. So I think I bonded more with those guys more than Billy Bob, simply because I was around them more. But to watch Billy and William Hurt do their things, like complete geniuses of doing their things. It was an acting masterclass. Not to shortchange Molly Parker too. Molly was great, and Olivia Thirlby and Maria, of course, reuniting with Maria after Prime Suspect was pretty awesome. I love that show. That was a great ride, and a nice role for me. I thought I learned a lot in that process.
Now you and I honestly I saw him so long ago. What were your parts in two Oscar movies, La La Land and Whiplash? You were in both of them. I mean, now they were so long ago because it's so funny.
Yeah.
And when I and especially me for interviewing, like I'll be watching a TV show and I'm like, holy crap, that guy was on my show because I've been doing this for 14 years. That guy was on my show years ago in LA. I go, and you were so inundated with so many different shows. So Whiplash, explain your roles in Whiplash and La La Land, because they both have been, they're people with the Oscars.
Yes, and a big shout out to Damon Chazelle, who's been so kind casting me in his movies. I got an audition to play a jazz band teacher, which was awesome. Of course, I read the script and I was like, "Who's playing this?" The other character. I'm looking at J.K.'s part, and I'm like, "That's the part." I'm like, "Wow, God, can I read for that part?" And they're like, "That part's been cast," and of course, it was brilliantly. I just ended up. I remember that audition. I was improvising my butt off. Like I was at my girlfriend's place at that time, and she had a piano, and I filmed a bunch of stuff that was never even close to being in the movie. We brought pictures of Miles in, and I just did this whole thing, and I think Damien really vibed with that. And I actually had more to do in Whiplash, both films, Whiplash and La La Land, but snip, 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 cut. Fun and I'm all excited because this is my first big Hollywood premiere. It's in Westwood, and we go down to the theater, and I've got my friend that I've flown in from Vancouver, and we're going, and there's Damon and Ryan and Emma. Hey, everybody, nice to see you all again, and blah, blah, blah. Great. We sit down and watch the movie, and gradually for the next 2.5 hours or however long it is, I slink further and further down into my seat because all the stuff I've done is not in the film. Like at that point, it's like there's hardly anything that I had worked on for 4 days of shooting that's in the film. There's one thing that I think remains, which is the thing that everybody sees. Everybody, oh, you were in La La Land. I'm like, no, but I actually had lines. I actually did whatever, so and so. But it was all gone, and I was so embarrassed because I brought this person. Yeah, I'm in this movie. I'm in this big movie, and you were barely in the flick. But it's like to be in two Oscar-winning productions by this talented young man. It's been really, really special to me. So when people say, "Oh, you're in Whiplash, oh, you're in La La Land," it feels great. But you're like, okay, have you watched Goliath or have you watched so and so? I've done like some work, but it's fun. It's an honor. I keep telling Damon, I'm like, man, you got to put me in something. Give me something to do,
Now,
these days.
Now it's funny. We've been talking for a while to get you on the show, and it's great that you're busy. I always love to see. I've always loved to see people. It's great that people are working, and I did not know that you were in Happy Face. And I sat there and I was trying to find something to watch. And me and my wife, we watch a few of the same things, but like right now we're watching Your Friends and Neighbors with John Hamm. But then I'm also watching The Waterfront. We see, and we like different things. So she didn't watch Happy Face, but I was on the couch one night and I go, I got to find something, and I put it on, and I was like, it's good. I really enjoyed it. But then I saw you on it, and I didn't know if your part was going to be bigger or not because. In the beginning, you're just, well, we don't know because you're not the main character. But what was it like? Is that? I know the killer's a true story, but is your character based on someone?
It was always kind of. I made choices to base him on something, but it wasn't like a real situation there. So I stayed away from a lot of that. And just kind of chose to do my thing on that, and that was a year ago now. That was my last television gig. Oddly enough, a year ago, and that was a fun project to work on. Again, lovely people.
Now, did you audition for that? Did you audition?
Yeah, that one I read for. Yeah, I remember I put my stuff on tape for that. Yeah.
So being a Juilliard guy, and now you've been on Broadway. You said you've been in different plays. What is it like for you now that the rooms have closed for auditions? Because everyone still has audition. It's amazing. Like you see people. Like my friend worked on the show, and he's like, he was a writer for this show, and all of a sudden, like Max Van Sydow is auditioning, and he's sitting there going to the producer like. He's like, wait, what? He's like, it's Max Van Sydow. It's an old story about Shelley Winters when they have her audition and she walks in with, have you heard the story? She walks in with 2 Oscars in a bowling ball bag, and she's like, there's your fucking audition. She just walked out. No, for you, for someone who's been on stage, who has been through the in-room, do you like the taped audition? Or are you acclimating it? Where do you stand on it right now?
You know what? It's kind of mixed because I've actually booked some really good jobs. The last show I just came off of for Apple TV that I was on for 2 seasons called The Big Door Prize. I remember booking in this room actually off a self-tape. So sometimes I enjoy that process because you get to play more and you can, it sometimes feels a little freer. Nerves are a little less a part of the situation. But then you look up and you realize, man, I have no connection to anybody. I can't go in the room. I can't get any adjustments. I can't. If they're looking for something else, you don't get an opportunity to provide it because you'll never know if they'll ever even watch your thing that you do. So I miss going in the rooms for that purpose. I miss seeing the other actors. Sometimes you see Like I remember going in the rooms and you would see Sterling, K. Brown, and Coleman, and Domingo, and other people, and you would greet each other and kind of feel a sense of camaraderie and unity. Or you just get to see people shake their hand. Who is this executive producer? Who is this director? They're people you never get to meet now, and again, you don't know if you're touching them or not. Or if they have something to say. Every once in a while, somebody would share, like, like when I used to go in the rooms and like meet. I did a thing with Sidney Lumet, but I remember the meeting, and I just remember the things he shared with me that empowered me and inspired me. And Joel Schumacher was the same way. People like that, you miss that kind of contact. So that's hard. And now, I mean, I've never auditioned a lot. Like some actors I know, they're always auditioning. I've been fortunate, but I'm never that busy with auditions. So it's like I feel disconnected from the process in a new way because of the distance of the self-tapes. And even though I like playing more, you bring more props, you can kind of ham it up a little more. But yeah, I do miss the contact. I think it's a contact sport.
Now,
so I missed that.
Now, I want to get back to your conducting before we go. The conducting, you've been doing a lot of these shows. Now, how do you advance to become a conductor? Where do they come to you, or how do you get these jobs? And then, real quick, I want to do a second part of that question. Is it because the orchestra, they know you're an actor? Are they sometimes like, because when I did stand-up comedy in Philly, if someone came in and said, back in the late 80s, if someone said, we're doing this to do a sitcom, we're like, yeah, you're not a comic, get out of here. Like, we had that, like, yeah, we're comics, we don't do this for sitcoms, we do it for the art. But first, how are you getting all these gigs? Because they're great gigs, and they're with, it's not like you're working at a high school orchestra, Boston Pops, Philly. I mean, a girl I went to high school with, her mom was a violinist for Philly for years when we were little. And it's just, so how are you getting those jobs? And then how do they react? Because they know, they're going to know you because you've been on TV so much. It's not like you're one and off. You've been on all these different shows.
But a lot of musicians don't know you for that. They don't know you for being an act. Because to them, I think a lot of them think if you were on Succession or if you were on a hit or something, then they go, oh, he's an actor, But they don't know that you've been in a Broadway Tony-winning play, Pulitzer-winning play. They don't care about a lot of actors. You aren't famous, in that sense. Occasionally, every once in a while, somebody says, oh, you on Criminal Minds. And you're like, for 10 seconds, and they don't know the extent to which you journeyed as an actor or your training and all that, because you haven't been in a Marvel movie or whatever. So I think most of the times I go to places and they see me, on terms of being a musician, and they might hear stories or, oh, he's an actor or whatever. But I think a lot of places just have seen me as being introduced as a conductor by studying at the Aspen Music Festival, by studying with Leonard Slatkin and David Zinman, and having good teachers and 2 assistantships at really good regional orchestras here in America, Houston, Kansas City. Those places have built relationships and word of mouth to where people want to give you opportunities to come in and do what you do. Now, granted, I've become more of a pops conductor, like classics, film scores, that sort of things. Originally, you were kind of being introduced, to do more Mozart, Beethoven, and that kind of stuff. But again, like with several other businesses in the entertainment industry, they slot you, say, how can we market you? Where do you best fit? What is your temperament? And, so far I am where I am. I end up doing a lot of movies, film scores, like classics, that sort of stuff. But if I was on a hit show, like if I was on something huge, right, who knows what I'd be conducting or where I'd be conducting.
How great is it, though, for you, because you are an actor and you get to conduct these movie scores? I mean, that's like the best. It must be like the best of 2 worlds for you, because it's 2 passions that you've had, one, and you've succeeded in them. It's not like Well, you were an actor who was, doing background. Now he's a conductor. You've been on TV. You've been in movies. You've been on Broadway. And all of a sudden you're conducting some of the greatest music ensembles in the country. I mean, if you're playing John Williams, you got game. So what is it like for you when you get up there? I mean, you just feel so blessed because you're like, I mean, when you're doing Star Wars, and it's like funny. We watched Jaws the other night, and the music is so important in it. You sit there and we forget how important music is. I mean, even like the John Hughes movies, the soundtrack. He was so good at picking the soundtracks. But when you sit up there in front of, like The Man the other night, and you got Star Wars, and you have all these Star Wars, and Star Wars fans, holy crap, they know everything. They're like, you better not fuck up because it's the Star Wars. What is it? What is the feeling? Is it just a feeling of just like, oh my God, like my life is awesome, or what's your feeling when you're up there?
Well, that's a great question, man. I think it depends on where you are doing what and what the process has been. But anytime I get to touch a John Williams score, like I just did Jaws, oddly enough, for the first time a few weeks ago, and Raiders I did a few months ago for the first time. These are things that define my childhood. So, and things that you would practice in your bedroom up against a record machine, never thinking it would ever be possible that you would get to do a complete film with an orchestra. So when I get to do these things, I'm like a kid in a candy store, The thing at the Man the other night, the orchestra, I guess, had posted a little video footage from the end of it or something, and I get to the end of that thing, and my wife is, she's in tears because it's like it's Star Wars with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Like, for no doubt there'll be tears in August when I'm doing Return of the Jedi with the Boston Pops, because half the orchestra, if not more, like play instruments because of some of these soundtracks. Some people, you know what I mean? Like, we've all been touched by this music. So to be able to stand up there and marry the images that you're seeing on the screen or my monitor with the people behind you, with all the shoulders that you stood on who have known your love and enthusiasm and supported that over the years, it kind of just all came into one focus. And I had a moment the other night at the Man stage, especially getting to the end of Star Wars and everybody screaming and the lightsabers are going on. And it just kind of sits on you where you do say, yes, I am absolutely blessed and fortunate to have such an opportunity to exist in these worlds. I mean, and it's not always that rosy, obviously, as you know, because you're a performer and but those moments, man, there's some special ones that kind of lift you. And that what I was feeling at the Man the other night was pretty special. Come on, man, it's the Philadelphia Orchestra. You got to be kidding me. They played the crap out of that score the other night. It was just like some of the sound you're hearing, you're like, this is it. And they enjoyed playing it. Like sometimes people don't always enjoy playing John Williams stuff because it's in the loop, and but when you hit places that are like, and you're like,
it's weird. It's weird you say that. I remember I saw The Who at Citizens Bank Field, and where me and my wife were sitting, in the background there was fireworks going off because something was going on, and you could see the bridge from Jersey, and then the girls playing the violin to Baba O'Reilly. And it was just one of those scenes. It was just like, that's what music's about. It was like, holy crap. Like, you sit there and you're like, and even when we saw Springsteen, and, he played Streets of Philadelphia, which he hasn't played Streets of Philadelphia forever. It's my wife's first time seeing him. I've seen him a bunch of times. But where we saw it and where we could watch it, and I've interviewed Stephen Van Zandt and Nils, so I know, and where we were sitting, we saw the bridge and Streets of Philadelphia comes on. And it's sure like the Star Wars, when the lightsabers are going and all that, I mean, it must just be such, and as someone who watches it, it's amazing. But to be the man who is the head of it, like you're like the NFL quarterback in the Super Bowl, it must just be, I mean, you must just walk off and just be in heaven.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very unique thing, especially when you're talking about standing in the middle of sound like that, like just like the force of a bunch of people coming together to produce that much sound and energy. It is a unique kind of heaven to be in that, for sure, man.
I got one more
For
question
sure.
for you. I always end my show with this. You've had this great career, you know. I mean, as you say, you never got that bit, but you've worked, you've done more. And I always say, if somebody has just got a pilot, they're successful as an actor to me, because you've beaten the odds of so many. I mean, I lived in LA, you know how it is. Well, looking back at your career, just what are quickly a few things that you're proud of? What when you look back, I mean, and it can be personal, it can be professional, but what is a few things that make you proud?
I think some of the people that I've connected to and met, certainly I have a lot of pride in. Work wise, there are things like that work I did on the newsroom with Jeff Daniels, speaking Aaron Sorkin's beautiful words. That I actually am proud of, to have had that kind of opportunity. I'm proud that I've been able to make a living as a performer, in careers that are very, very, very difficult to sustain. I mean, again, moments like the other night doing Star Wars. I guess Juilliard, completing that. Look, man, as much as I would bitch and complain about a ton of things, and certainly if we had more time or if we ever meet in person, I'd do more of that. As much as I do that stuff, this is a charmed life I'm living, and I have to remember that, sometimes, and try to keep that in focus. But there's too much to be proud of. I think I've done things that there are lots of people out there who would love to see in their lifetimes if they were fortunate. And there are a lot of people who are way more talented than me who never get some of the opportunities I've gotten. And so I do take pride in being on the path and on the course. And I don't know where it's going or how long it's going for or whatever, but I know the road I've been on. I do take some pride in it and feel pretty good about everything, bruises and all.
That's awesome, man. I'm so glad we got to do this. As I said, I was going to try to make it to Philly, but it's just been crazy. And I know, and I love it though that you're so busy. So now, how can people? Your website? Do you keep DamonGupton.com? Do you keep it up?
I got to work on that.
How can people find out where you're going to be conducting? How can they find that out?
Yeah, I'm going to be better about posting that on the website and also Instagram, and I'm getting better at this whole branding, marketing thing. But that's generally where I post. Instagram is a pretty good source for that information, and I'd be delighted anytime you're around or next time I'm in Philly for sure. If you want to come out and see something, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
To meet you.
Be awesome. So people, follow Damon. Also go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 1,040 episodes there. Also, if you go to YouTube, search The Coop Tank. That's my weekly, I moderate 3 local Philadelphia and New Jersey business people. We talk about motivation. We talk about goals, stuff like that. It's with my friend Joe Gangemi, produces it down there at Sweet Recording. Also, Coop's Comedy Corner. It's Jimmy Corhan and Comedy Trainwreck. I host comics I know. TV writers. Actually, he mentioned Kyle Secor. I had Kyle Secor and Reed Diamond on. They're not comics, but they're both really funny guys. They came on, and I've had Rich Seidner, and I've had, my friend Steve Scrovan, who wrote For Everyone Loves Raymond. So check them out. Also, if you go to coopscomedycorner.com, you can get swag. I have Coop Tank shirts, Coop's Comedy shirts, Cooper Talk shirts. We got water bottles. We got doggy sweaters. So check that out. And keep listening. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next time.